it was a whole different trip. In fact, I tell people those first 2 days feel like one Camino, and the next 5 feel like a whole separate Camino. But frankly, those 5 would not have been as wonderful had I not gone through those first 2.
That's the voice of David Taylor, a Texas Christian who undertook the famous Camino de Santiago pilgrimage in Spain this spring and shared his journey on Facebook. In that clip you just heard, David is talking about the struggles of his first 2 days on this pilgrimage walk and how those tough times form the basis for good adventures the rest of the way. That's a metaphor for our faith life, and in this episode, David and I will explore other metaphors and mappings of the Spanish pilgrimage walk to our daily Christian walk on this episode of the Practical Faith Academy podcast. I'm Cecil Taylor of Cecil Taylor Ministries, teaching Christians how to live a 7-day practical faith. Everything I do, whether blogs, books, or videos, is about taking our faith from Sunday into the rest of the week, applying scripture and faith to life situations. I'm also interested in children and parents, as I've written a book entitled Unison Parenting, the comprehensive guide to navigating Christian parenthood with one voice. You can find out more about the book and a special online sale in the podcast notes, as well as much more about my ministry and how it can help you. In the Practical Faith Academy podcast, I add other voices with other life experiences to understand how they put faith into practice. Please subscribe to my podcast according to your listening platform's instructions. I welcome your comments and your sharing of this podcast with others. I first met David Taylor when I spoke at his church men's group a few years ago. Then someone told me, you should really get to know David Taylor. And then I sort of met him again, and we still haven't gone to coffee together, but I've got him now on the Practical Faith Academy podcast. David, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this is one way I can get to talk to you. So one question I'd like to ask to start off with, since it is the theme of my ministry, when I say 7-day practical faith, what does that mean to you?
Well, I'll tell you, I really like that. It resonates with me because it conjures up the idea that your spiritual life is much more than simply going to church or a Bible study every now and then. That you incorporate it, much like Paul talked about, making it part of your everyday life. You're walking around. It becomes part of your personality. It's as the kids say, it's 24/7. It's not something you do in a compartmentalized box. It's something that you are, and it's just integral, like breathing or anything else. So I like that image that phrase conjures up. Yeah,
that makes me think when you say the younger people, they also like to say 100, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how we want to be, right? We want to be 100, and 7-day practical faith is part of that. Well, the reason, of course, I brought you on here is because you took part in something called Camino de Santiago in Spain. And what are the particulars of this pilgrimage and its purpose?
The Camino de Santiago is an ancient pilgrimage. It dates back to like the 7th or 8th century. And it began when they magically discovered the bones of St. James, who had been martyred in Jerusalem, in a field in Spain. Now, granted, I have no idea if these are actual St. James bones. Who knows? But that began the pilgrimage. Some pope somewhere okayed them. Yes, they are the bones of St. James, and they built this huge cathedral around them. In that particular period of time, pilgrimages were hugely important for regions because it brought money and culture and all kinds of things as these religious people would make pilgrimages to worship at the site wherever these bones were. Most pilgrimages were around Jerusalem or Rome or those kind of places. And so this really put Spain, and particularly Santiago, on the map as people began to make these pilgrimages. Over the years, especially here lately, since 2000, it's kind of exploded in popularity. there was a movie that came out with Martin Sheen called The Way, and it is a story of a young man who goes on the pilgrimage and then dies. And the story revolves around his father flying to Spain to collect his stuff and his remains, and he ends up finishing the Camino for his son. And it sparked a lot of interest in it. And so now there are thousands of YouTube videos. There's guide companies that will take you. There's a lot of services around the Camino to help people do this pilgrimage. There are about 8 or 9 main Camino paths. Some of them come up through Portugal. Some of them start in France, and you go over the Pyrenees Mountains. Some people will tell you your Camino starts wherever you are when you begin, right? And then there are minor trails that feed into these major trails at different spots. So the closer you get to Santiago, the more and more pilgrims there are on the trail, because everything comes to a point, right?
Did you have to really get in shape for this? Was it something that you did?
I did. I'm 69 now. I was 68 when I decided to do this, and I was in okay shape for 68. I had never done anything like. I mean, when I was in my 30s, my son and I did a hike with the Boy Scout troop across the Great Divide. And that was about 5 or 7 days on the trail, and we carried our food and water and all that. But I was 35, 36, you know. I hadn't done anything like this in a long time. So I began to walk, and started out trying to do 2 or 3 miles a day, and I would increase that a little bit. But I didn't really push myself, which is very much my nature. So bad weather days and things like that, I wouldn't go walking. And then as I got closer to the time I decided to leave, the reality of, you know, you're going to need to walk 12 to 15 miles a day hit me, and I began to really push myself. So typically 6 miles was all I could do in one day, just for a time restraint.
Wow. Okay. So it's a big step up to do double that or more on the Camino in a day. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But you're also not crunched for time. You've got all day. You've got all daylight. So you can walk for an hour or two, take a 20 or 30-minute break and refresh yourself, and then walk for another hour or two. And you'd be surprised how many miles you can log.
My understanding is that you struggled those first 2 days. You started out 3 hours before sunrise on the first day, so you were walking through darkness. Because the cafes weren't open, you couldn't get water and became dehydrated. You carried too much in your day pack. You wore out and took a cab for the last couple of miles. You struggled to find lodging, and what you found was uncomfortable. And then rain greeted you throughout day 2. So by the middle of the day, you were at the low point in this movie, so to speak.
I was really down on myself. I was texting back home to my wife and telling her, you know, I feel like a failure already, and I've let everybody down, and all this. I was just unloading on her. And of course, she's texting back, nobody cares about any of that but you. You know, I don't know why you're so hard on yourself. Just relax. You're in Spain. Try to have a good time.
Yeah.
And then there was another person. There was an older gentleman I'd met here in Flower Mound, where I live, who has done the Camino a couple of times, and he's a little bit older than I am. And I was texting with him that I had to take a taxi, and you know, I felt like a failure, and I might as well get on the plane and go home. You know, I'm not doing this right. And he wrote back and he said, well, let me explain something to you. If you want to do a true Camino, you got to wear sandals like the monks did. You got to carry just a stick and a knapsack and no money. You got to sleep on the floor of a church. And that helped me a lot. It really did. So the third morning, and I did write about this, there was just something when I woke up, I told myself, there is no true Camino. That's a false thing that I've been telling myself. just like I think there's not really a right way and a wrong way to do Christianity. I think we all worship God, we all follow God, and the scriptures and things as best we can, and the bottom line is we should love each other. And if you're doing that, you're doing fine. Quit worrying about the other stuff. And so that was my attitude that third morning. And frankly, it was like walking out of the tomb. I mean, I know that sounds
Oh,
cliche. It was a new day, and I was a new person. And there was a pep in my step. I began to take a lot of pictures. I would just stop and take some pictures. I began to try to get creative with how I took them. I met people on the trail and would stop and spend 10 minutes talking to somebody. I made terrible time, but
of course.
but I didn't worry about that, right?
It was quality time.
Exactly. It was a whole different trip. In fact, I tell people those first 2 days feel like one Camino, and the next 5 feel like a whole separate Camino. But
Yeah.
frankly, those 5 would not have been as wonderful had I not gone through those first 2. And
Wow.
I began to see the lesson there too, that there is some value in the struggle and the being broken and the surrender to the fact, no, I can't do this perfect. That's okay.
I think you had a line something like, surrender leads to transformation. When we surrender to Jesus, that leads to the possibility of transformation that wasn't there before. It's almost like we block God.
And I read in the teachings of Jesus, that's exactly what he's calling us to do. He was hardest on those who thought they already had it figured out and that their way was the only way. He was always hard on them, calling them, you bro to snakes and all that kind of stuff. But the people he was most gentle with were the ones in the bottom layer of the society, the prostitutes and the beggars and the ones with disease that everybody had cast out. He was most gentle with them. And at some point even said, they will see the kingdom of God much quicker than you will, talking to the Pharisees. So it was very much that for me on the Camino. I had gotten caught up in the romanticized version of the Camino, and I very much wanted to be that pilgrim.
David, I hear this, and you've done it already, but I think there's so many mappings into our faith journeys. But maybe we're all on a Camino right
I think
now,
we are.
and
Yeah.
and we get told, the Camino, you have to step on these stepping stones just a certain way, and if you get off path, then it's all
Right.
wrong, and that sort of thing. And part of it was you wanting to do the Camino right by the Camino, if you will. But then part of it, it sounds to me, was your own identity of like,
Yeah.
am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? And we can think that way about God, right? Am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Am I lovable? Am I forgivable? All those kinds of self-doubts are what
Yeah.
kind of start to wreck us.
Yeah. I've always had, my whole life, I've had this little voice in my head that has told me negative things, like you shouldn't try that because you're probably going to mess that up, or you can't do this, or you're not doing this right, or you don't deserve this reward because you aren't the best, that kind of thing. And at some point in my journey, a counselor or somebody advised me to name that voice. And so I named my voice Bob. And the purpose of that is so you can tell that voice to shut up. They would say, now, when you hear that, just say, Bob, you need to shut up. I'm busy right now. And that works pretty good. But frankly, on the Camino, on that third day, sitting on a stone wall there in Spain, I left Bob sitting on that wall.
Oh, amen.
I told him, it's been fun, but I don't need you anymore. And I think for me, I've done my best to hang on to the Camino since I've been back. And it's difficult because it's not the same here. Everything's very fast here. But Bob hasn't come back. The other thing I enjoyed about the Camino is there's a lot of twists and turns and hills. And I'm telling you, around every corner, there was something new. It was either a new, beautiful picture I could take, or you would see the little corner of a cafe and your heart would kind of quicken, maybe I can get a cup of coffee and a sandwich, I'm so tired. There something exciting was around every corner, it seemed like. And I want to keep that. I want to look for what's exciting around the next corner.
Well, I think one of the things I take away from all this, David, is the metaphors that we can map into our daily lives. A lot of times I talk about, I ask people, what's the hardest part about putting faith into practice? How do you develop and maintain a 7-day practical faith? But I think we've seen the ingredients of all that in your story. The idea of being on the journey and continuing the journey, but kind of marching to your own beat, if you will, perceiving what God has around the next corner for you, being one who has lost something in order to gain something. All those kinds of themes really apply to our daily faith.
It really does. And I think, the excitement that every encounter you have throughout the day is potentially a new friend or a new pathway or a new journey or a new experience. But there was this one instance. I was sitting in a roadside cafe, and this group came in, and there was this guy with them that acted like he was with them, but not really. And they were looking for a place to sit down, and I motioned to the table next to me, and he and I made eye contact, and I motioned to the chair right next to me. And he sat down, and like we do on the Camino, I said, what's your name and where are you from and why are you doing this? And I'm here to tell you, he just immediately opened up to me. He sat down, he said, my name's John. I'm from South Carolina, and I've been on a spiritual journey for a couple of years now, and I heard about the Camino, and I thought this would be a good spiritual experience for me. He said, but 5 weeks before I left, my mother died. And I thought, that's a very personal thing for a guy to share with another guy. I mean, guys just don't share like that usually. And I said, well, John, that's I'm so sad. I said, I lost my mom a couple of years ago. And we sat there in that roadside cafe and talked about our moms and how different the world looks once your mom passes. And really made a deep connection, and then went our separate ways. And 10 minutes down the road, I'm thinking, well, I didn't get that guy's phone number. I didn't even get his phone number. About 2 days later, I'm sitting in another roadside cafe, and here comes John. And we made eye contact, and he comes running over, and we gave each other a big hug. And both of us about the same time said, I need your phone number. So we swapped phone numbers. We talked more about the Camino and how things were going. And we began to compare notes on when we expected to finish. And so he was going to finish a day ahead of me. And so he said, but I have an extra day in Santiago, so I will meet you at the cathedral. So when I finished, and it's a huge emotional experience to walk into Santiago and that cathedral and the courtyard, you just can't hardly control yourself. And there's John. We've stayed in touch since I got home, and he's coming through the DFW airport in June and is going to spend the night with me. So I can't wait to see him again. I get to introduce him to my family. It's going to be great. It's just one of the experiences on the Camino that I want to continue that here at home. I'm a United Methodist, and so I believe in and practice the priesthood of all believers. So I think we all have a ministry. It's just a matter, are you practicing it or not? Are you working in it? And since the Camino, I'm convinced God gives us a chance to be in ministry many, many, many times during the day, and we just don't see them. We're just so
Amen.
busy, and we're
Yeah.
just going so fast. If we just slow down a little bit, and whatever the weather, whatever the day, whatever circumstance you're in, there's always opportunity for ministry. It's just a matter of being open to it. So,
Well, great.
Anyway.
Well, David, I appreciate you being here. I think that we all have a lot that we can learn and map into our daily faith from what you've talked about. So I pray that Camino will stick with you. And thanks for being
Thank
here.
you. And thank you for what you do. I really like your podcast. I've listened to a couple of them, and I appreciate your ministry.
Thanks to David for the kind words and for joining me on this episode. Next up this month on the Practical Faith Academy podcast is Kim Sorrell, author of the book Love Is. Kim supports the people of Haiti with her mission work, and she has fascinating stories to tell of the intersection of that mission with her inspiration to spend a year living the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. Love Is an excellent book, and Kim is a wonderful guest, so I'm looking forward to sharing our conversation with you. Everything is full speed ahead with a special offer regarding my book, Unison Parenting. It's now available for just $10 plus free shipping, plus more than $200 in free bonus gifts. Yes! Unison Parenting sells for $23 on the big sites, but I'm cutting out the middleman and offering it for $10 with free shipping in the U.S. Please see the show notes for a direct link or find the offer in the big orange box at unisonparenting.com. Please stay in touch with my ministry by registering for my free monthly newsletters. For information about my ministry, I have 2 newsletters available through ceciltaylorministries.com. In the first half of the month, I deliver Backstage Pass, where I go behind the scenes to share insider information about Cecil Taylor Ministries. It has quickly become my most popular free service. In the second half of the month comes Monthly Connections, which suggests practical faith tips, recaps and previews ministry work, and has some fun stuff too. Sign up now on the homepage and receive a free gift that is described in the show notes below. I'm introducing a third free monthly newsletter focused just on parenting tips and advice. The Unison Parenting newsletter debuts this month. I'm excited to have 3 contributors besides myself: author and pastor Kim Myers, pediatric therapist and author Jenny Cruz, and Tawny Kinslow, who writes on parent-child relationships. You'll receive quality information from this quartet of people. To reserve the first issue of this free newsletter, please sign up in the second orange box at unisonparenting.com. Until next time, remember, God sends you into the world every day.